It's about that positive impact first and generating a profit as a result of that.
You have one of the most amazing regeneration business models that I have seen.
We're buying land that we think is under market value at the moment because it's got huge natural capital potential.
What are you trying to achieve with that land?
With each site, we listen to the environment and we pull away the bad to start with. We take farmland and we make it organic. We reduce any of the sort of pesticides and chemicals that hit the environment, and we try and give nature space to move.
Rich Stockdale is a visionary leader and a founder at Oxygen Conservation, one of the world's most impactful natural capital portfolios. Rich is transforming marginal lands into thriving ecosystems for people and wildlife, and is determined to reshape how the world values nature.
We've immortalised post-war intensive agriculture. So people are taught that that's what nature looks like. They don't realise what it could be.
Give me an example of one of the most amazing transformations in the landscape.
The sound, it went from abject silence to a constant hum and buzzing. We had 5 owls hunting in daylight because it was like an all-you-can-eat buffet. The amount of nature that was there was just unbelievably incredible.
And why are you doing what you're doing?
I don't know how to not try and fix things and how not to make it better. If you surround yourself with people who are truly exceptional, it makes you want to be more. Across our portfolio, we hope to sequester nearly 2 million tonnes of carbon.
Wow, I'm literally picturing you with the cape of a Superman right now jumping off.
Thank you.
Quick one. This is Better Futures podcast, brought to you by C-Biotech and Earth Plus. We're on a mission to create the largest soil and CO2 cleanup with nature and to turn construction from a huge carbon emitter into a huge carbon sink. If you'd like to know more about our work, click on the links below and enjoy this episode.
Rich, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here with us in Belgium. You're the CEO of Oxygen Conservation. You have one of the most amazing regeneration business models that I have seen.
That's incredibly kind, thank you.
Please tell me and all our listeners all about it.
So we're about 3 years old as a company. We were founded with the mission to scale conservation, to deliver a positive environmental and social impact and demonstrate that would allow you to deliver a profit as a result of what you did, not the purpose. And that's the key cultural difference for us as a business. It's about that positive impact first and generating a profit as a result of that, not what you do.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
We're trying.
How do you do that?
So we acquire land at scale, big landscapes. So our smallest is 300 acres. Our biggest is soon to be 15,000 acres. So we've bought 11 estates across England, Scotland and Wales to put together a portfolio of around 45,000 acres.
Wow.
So each one of those landscapes is different, beautifully different. So we go from the southwest in Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands, across to the flatlands of Norfolk and the Welsh coast. And with each site, we listen to the environment and we pull away the bad to start with. That's the only thing we do quickly. So we take farmland and we make it organic. We take away grouse shooting, which for generations has damaged the hillside. We reduce any of the sort of pesticides and chemicals that hit the environment, and we try and give nature space to move on those landscapes. But each one is very different. Some sites, the challenges we have to overcome vary dramatically. So some places, too many deer and too much sheep grazing pressures. Other sites, agriculture's been too intense for too long. Other places we have the opportunity to provide more homes for people than others. So every site incredibly different. So yeah, we listen to the land, wait and see what the best outcome is, and try and work in partnership with as many people and groups locally as possible, because for us, conservation is about bringing people to the environment, not keeping them away.
A question, how do you listen to the land?
It's a really great question. So time spent on the environment, in it, patience. If you buy a new landscape, you need to listen to it for an entire year at least to even see each of the seasons once, and it's not enough time. Ideally, you'd want to listen to it for 10 or 20 years. We've tried to force our calendar. We've tried to force financial years on the environment. It doesn't work that way. The landscape, blinks in a year and modifies itself slightly in decades and only changes in centuries. So you need to give it a different time frame. But we have the most incredible array of ecologists and environmentalists and environmental economists who look at the landscape through a series of lenses and bring all that data together. We're also a data company at heart. So before we even go buy a site, we look at 70 different spatial data sets across every square meter of a landscape. So that gives us a really great foundation and base level. and then a huge series of ecological surveys. So we look at everything from precipitation to slope to soils to what wildlife is there or should be there. A lot of that's remote sensed, a lot of that is feet on the ground, and then the people there are part of the landscape as well. So on some of the bigger estates, we might inherit estate managers who have been there 10 or 20 years. They're the most incredible history of a place. They can really talk for it because they've seen it. Or tenants or neighbours are such a brilliant resource for us to call upon.
Wow, this is amazing. It's the first time I see someone listening to the land and by everything that you mean behind it before making a decision. What types of lands are these? You mentioned that some are farming, some have animals on them. When you're buying the land, what type of land are you looking for?
Just on the listening point, one thing that's really interesting is it's not always consistent with what it tells you.
Mm-hmm.
So people will have one perspective of a landscape, others will have another. I don't know about you, but me, my wife and my two kids will often think the exact opposite things about a subject. So if you apply thousands of people that might live near a place, of course they're going to have different views. And land's been used in so many different ways. Sometimes it's hard to really listen to it, but you've got to keep trying. In terms of the use of land before we're there, wide range of things. So we're not farmers. We don't buy productive arable land. We buy marginal farmland that has been grazed often with sheep or a small number of cattle, but probably shouldn't have been. You know, it's land that post World War II, when we were pushed to use every square metre of land for agriculture, farming was forced upon it. But it really shouldn't have been. These are hill farms, these are marginal lands that they want to be rushy and wet and scruffy, and we've tried to force them to be agricultural. That's the predominant site. The average site we would buy would be that type of environment. We do have 2 or 3 more traditional farms. So we have an amazing farm in the southwest of England, and we found that in partnership with a 17th generation farming family.
Wow.
So this wasn't our business model. This is one of those rules that breaks. That you break for an exception. And we met Kate and David, the farming family there, who were looking to inherit from his mum and dad, and they need to sort their sort of inheritance situation. And they pitched a project to us and said, please work with us on this partnership. So it's 450 acre farm. We bought 2/3 of the farm. We provide capital and advice and guidance, but they run the farm day to day. They still do the farming. And as a result of our partnership with them, nearly 180 acres of new woodlands gone in, connecting old historic woodlands. One of my favourite days on that farm was when Grandad, farming dad and daughter put back a hedgerow that Grandad had removed with his granddad as a child. And it's amazing that story. And that site's really about their family and that place and about how we can help them do that. And as part of that project, we're hoping that the carbon credits we produce from that new woodland creation will give the family a pension for the first time. And that was something really stark when they told me that story, that lots of farmers don't have a plan for the future. The business model in the UK is so tight, it doesn't afford them a pension or an option moving forward. But carbon credits could give farmers an opportunity to do that. So
that's really sad,
really
right?
exciting.
I mean, people that feed us that don't have any.
It's really
option
hard.
For the future.
It's we end up at the moment. Politics is so polarizing, and everyone wants things to be black or white, and very little is. There's all shades of grey. So I think farmers are in a really, really difficult spot in the UK. So post Brexit, subsidies going away, the worst start to a year. So we're recording this in June 24. But it's not stopped raining for 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly hard. Now, at the same time, lots of farmers are responsible for chemicals in the environment. They're responsible for soils hitting our river systems. There are some bad operators in every industry. But the truth is, it is incredibly difficult to be a farmer right now. And I think we need to be more understanding about the challenges they face and have those conversations, rather than historically the environment sector has been very polarized. It's either been you're pro-conservation or you're pro-farming. There's not enough time for fighting anymore. We need to find a commonality and accept there's a place for everyone.
I fully agree. We need radical collaboration.
I love that, radical collaboration. Yeah.
I want to go back to that business model. So you find the land. What are you trying to achieve with that land? What do you do once you purchase it?
So the key point at the start of this process is the identification and the acquisition. So we have used our proprietary software to analyse virtually every square metre of land in certainly Scotland and most of rural England. So that means we have ranked sites in how good an acquisition opportunity we think they could be. Now, it's taken years to develop that model, but it means when we look at a piece of land now, we are making a data-based investment decision. And I think that's really rare in the environment sector. Most people, they're comfortable with data when it relates to counting the number of species or diatoms or things like that from a science perspective. But the merging of finance and environment and sort of commercial considerations, I think that's a point of differentiation for us. So we have screened millions and millions of acres. We physically visited nearly 80 estates in person to buy 11. So really selective. If you looked at a venture capital model of a business trying to find businesses to invest in, they might look at thousands to do due diligence on 10 or 20 to buy one. We're replicating that type of scale in the landscape. So we're buying land that we think is under market value at the moment because it's got huge natural capital potential.
Okay.
So the base of our business model is long-term increasing land value over time. So we've seen, whether you look at 30, 50 or 100-year trends in the UK, land value, whilst volatile, is going up and will continue to go up because we're a very small country with not a huge amount of space, so land is going to become increasingly valuable. That's the base presumption in terms of what we're doing. Then when we have that land, we can do things that will add value. So turning it organic, using it in a way that's more sensitive and more appropriate for what it's for. So base of our pyramid is provided by land value uplift. Then above there comes natural capital. So carbon credits, biodiversity net gain, which is as of 2024's new legislation in the UK, requiring a developer to either provide a 10% gain in nature on site or buy credits that provide that neighbouring the site on an off-site solution. And increasingly we'll also see nature credits and nutrient neutrality and other sort of paid ecosystem services come. To give you an idea of a quantum of that, across our portfolio, we hope to sequester nearly 2 million tonnes of carbon in afforestation or peatland restoration projects, which to the best of our knowledge will put us towards, if not at the top of sequestration in the UK in terms of a company. So you've got land value uplift, you've got natural capital. Above there, 2 of our large Scottish sites screen for renewable energy opportunities. So across each one's around 12,000 acres and about 500 to 1,000 acres of each is suitable for a wind farm. Now, that doesn't come without its compromises, so we will have to disturb some of the environment to make progress forward. But it's a lot like, we're looking out on the most amazing environment here that used to be a shipyard. There will have had to have been some remediation, some work, some improvement to turn it into what it is today. And I think that's a compromise we're having to make with renewables. We need an energy transition if we're going to move to net zero. The UK has made it really difficult to do renewable energy. You know, just driving across Europe to come here, you can see wind turbines everywhere. It's virtually impossible to place one in the UK at the moment. There's such a small amount of land that politically is willing to be looked at. We're really fortunate that as a result of our data modelling work, we found 2 sites that could produce wind farms. So the third string of our bow is hopefully renewable energy. The fourth is the built property footprint. So across that portfolio, we have somewhere around 120-ish buildings. So that provides homes to 70 people in rural communities at the moment. It provides ecotourism opportunities in
Those
holiday
buildings
cottages.
are so beautiful.
Some
so
are. Some are very dilapidated agricultural buildings that need fixing in future, and we can come on to that. But that presents problems from energy efficiency, and the challenges of retrofitting houses, I think, is an incredibly challenging issue to resolve. But we're really proud that we can provide homes for people in the environment, because we need to show conservation doesn't mean people away from the land, it means people with and toward the land. And then the final string of the bow for us is agriculture, but we're not farmers. We have a huge amount of respect for farmers. We do some farming in-house, but most we work with neighbouring grazers or contracting farmers who will use animals, often cattle or pigs, as a vehicle for conservation. So we're in terms of regenerative farming, we're hugely in favour of it. Most of our sites have an aspect to that, but we're not farmers, we wouldn't profess to be. So across the portfolio, we look at funding in those 5 different ways: land value uplift, natural capital, renewable energy, built property and ecotourism, and then regenerative agriculture.
Absolutely love it. I want to reach in a team like you on every continent and every country.
Wow, the travel footprint of that would be a lot. We need to replicate where
Exactly,
we are.
that's what I mean. We need to replicate you guys.
I think what's really exciting for us is we've had amazing backing from the Oxygen House Group, which is our original funding partners, and they've allowed us to make something a reality. So there's so many amazing companies out there with the idea of doing 1 or 2 aspects of what we're doing, but we've been able to take it from concept to literally having what we think is the biggest genuine conservation-based natural capital portfolio in the UK. And we are starting to get those international approaches. So we were asked about Norway, about Spain, about Portugal. My aspirations are the US next. I think that'd be really exciting because of scale and the impact we can have, and also the relationship with the environment. So the sort of experts and people I've spoke to across there suggests that culturally the US is 20 to 30 years behind in terms of connection and recognition with the environment, as a result of the way society works and politics works, and the fact they've got so much more space than we have in Europe. So I think that could be a really exciting project for us in the next year or two.
Rich, how did you come with all of that, and why are you doing what you're doing?
How is a really good question. I'm a data geek by heart. Actually, let's start earlier than that. Passion as a child was whitewater kayaking, throwing myself off waterfalls. So I learned
Waterfalls?
Yeah.
How tall?
Little to start with, then getting bigger.
Bigger, how bigger?
Not Iceland big, but biggest waterfall maybe 8 meters, 10 meters, something like that.
Wow, I'm literally picturing you with a cape of a Superman right now jumping off.
I remember the last trip I did, this is going back to university now, we did a series of waterfalls in Scotland that only run when it's flooding.
Yeah.
And I remember a video of me dropping off this final waterfall, rolling over, so in kayak, rewrite yourself and paddle broken in half. Like, it's a great photo, but I'm like, now I'm in a difficult spot in terms of getting down from this.
You were the first person that I met that jumps a waterfall.
Cool, I'll take that. Long time ago, younger days, crazy times. But that's how I learned to love and understand the environment. And that led to geography at university, a PhD in the maths behind how water moves. So big data analysis and also remote sensor monitoring. So I made tiny little GPSs, hundreds of them, threw them into rivers and recorded the ones and zeros. And I wrote the computer code to turn those into patterns of how water moves. I cannot code anymore. It's long. It's like a language. You lose it if you don't use it. And so that was the start. And then that led me came out of university 2008-9, right around the financial crisis. The only place that was recruiting was the public sector. So I went to work for the government for 9 years. It was awful. Don't do it. Every 6 months I told them no one's doing anything. I want to actually do something that helps. So they promoted me. I had 16 jobs in 9 years. And then by the end of it, they got really bored of me demanding that we did more for the environment. And I got fed up of them not letting me. So I left and worked alongside a really amazing environmental contractor called Sanctus. And we did all the things that I'd wanted to do at the EA. So I wanted to build new nature reserves and plant woodlands and reintroduce species and be able to turn around and go, I had a positive impact on the environment, not just moving numbers on a spreadsheet. And I thought I was going to do that forever. Wonderful, wonderful business with a company called Sanctus. And then my friends at Oxygen House approached me and said, we really want to have a massive impact on the world. You're our environment guy. What can we do? What might that look like? And the idea of oxygen conservation came from there. It's very much that meeting of the mind. So that the founding board of Oxygen Conservation, very entrepreneurial, very impact focused. And I was able to give them a route where we could deliver that and realize it. The why is a really interesting question. And I wish I had a clever answer for why. I don't know, because it's there. I don't know how to not try and fix things and how not to make it better. I think that's got more pronounced as I've got children. So our children are similar ages, mine 8 and 5. I want them to know I tried to do something. When they say, hold on, we knew the planet was in a really bad way. What did you do? I can say I tried. In fact, I don't know if the Dr. Seuss storybook carries over here. Does the Lorax, is that a book you've heard of?
No.
It's like a historical kind of 70s, 80s, 60s maybe children's book. And it's about, the Lorax is like a magical creature that speaks for the trees. I've got to send you a copy.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and it goes about how society cuts everything down to sort of force growth through the environment. And ultimately, I'm reading this to my daughter, and she said, well, you're not allowed to cut trees down, are you, Dad? I'm sorry, you are, Emmy, yeah. And so I keep talking through this book, and I'm like, but Daddy's going to try and plant a huge amount of trees. And she just looked at me and went, don't try. I just thought that's a perfect analogy of why we need to do it. Just get on and do it. So that's about the best why I can give you.
There are 3 main takeaways for me from the story that you just shared. The first one, there are amazing people out there that want to do impact, like investors with money, that they really want to deliver an impact. This is so much hope. Number 2, we live, honestly, let's admit it, we live in a screwed up world. It's very polluted. Our economic model is non-sustainable. But there are people like you that need to fix it, and we need more people like that don't just take the status quo, but that don't know how not to fix things.
Yeah.
And number 3, we just have to do it, right?
We do.
We do.
We absolutely do.
So when I first got to know about you, and before we spoke online, I remember I read your website, and I noticed A lot of humor and unusual way how you guys work. It already shines through the pages. And then we talk, and you talked about your team and that how you love recruitment, and I just love your job posts. I mean, don't join oxygen conservation if you're not willing to share food and all kinds of other things. And you even have a psychologist on your team. So please tell me about how you build your team, and then I want to know about the psychologist all, because in the space of sustainability, mental health is such a big issue because we see so many problems every day, and sometimes it's hard that we try to bang against the wall. So I want to know all about how you build teams and why you make decisions that you do.
So I had a pretty grim childhood. I didn't I went to a terrible school. My parents, not good. I was a lonely kid, and that's okay. You get, when some things are challenging, you learn from them, grow and adapt. And I think my ability to listen to people, to understand and preempt situations comes from having a pretty crappy childhood. So swings and roundabouts. But it never occurred to me that work could be fun. So my dad was a builder. When I was younger, I worked on building sites all throughout university, paying my way. My mum was a cleaner and a school dinner lady, and they worked really hard. So it never occurred to me work could be fun or enjoyable, and I could spend it with people I liked and were friends, and it was exciting. So when I first stepped into the workplace, the only concept I had about team came from high performance sport. So I played American football at a really high level and lots of different. I just wanted to be a professional athlete and just was never good enough to go pro in anything really. So my understanding of leadership and my understanding of team only came from sport. And when I thought, well, if I can apply some of these things that gave me teams that I loved and environments together and build a team in business around that way, well, that could be really exciting. So as I sort of came out of university and I met my wife as I was finishing my PhD, and this may come as a surprise, but I'm quite a pain in the ass when we go on holiday because I don't relax very well. So I remember her making me read and saying, you cannot complain until you've read this book. So I came really late to reading. So these three things coming together, starting in the workplace, a background in sport and my view of that's where team and performance comes from, and then my wife forcing me to read. And that opened up the door for every big business in Silicon Valley. So the way Google works. There's an amazing book by Laszlo Bock, who was a head of people at Google when they scaled from 40 people to 40,000. And his approach to HR really informed mine. So I brought all those three strings together. So high performance sport, Silicon Valley, and then I just got obsessed with learning about how to create great cultures and how you can break away those things that are sort of counterintuitive. So everyone thinks you have to behave a certain way in a business environment. You have to be someone you're not. Why? It's way, way easier to be honest about things. It's an Oscar Wilde quote that says, life's hard enough without adding impersonation to the list of skills you need. I did an interview a few weeks ago and was asked, Rich, you're known for being radically transparent. Why? I'm like, it's just easier to be honest, isn't it? It just frees it up for everyone. So that's kind of the underpinning of how we put a team together. The sporting bit's really important. So my version of feedback coming from sport and a PhD environment is pretty immediate and direct. So the feedback I would get when I was playing American football, if someone was better than me, I'd be on the floor. And I'd have to get up and go, okay, well, that didn't go well. So either I adapt something or I'm going to spend a lot of time on the floor. And it's a New Zealand rugby rule as well. You give that feedback immediately and honestly. And if not, you're being selfish. When you reframe it that way, that's how you build high performance environments, I think. You give people honest feedback, you're demanding about what's required, and you set high standards, but then you reward performance. And you mentioned the article about don't apply for jobs here. I just think it's really bad where businesses offer something that's not true. So I asked the team to work incredibly hard. That bit's true. The bit I don't write in that article is I'm the person who says to the team, please stop doing that more often than not, because if you surround yourself with people who are truly exceptional, it makes you want to be more. So it ends up, we bought an estate and we acquired an estate manager as part of the acquisition. And he messaged me 3 or 4 weeks after working with us and went, it's so addictive. Well, I've got goosebumps telling this story. Hey, Charles. It's so addictive working here because everyone's brilliant. And this is someone who's used to being like the biggest fish in their own pond and having to drive everyone else on. But when you look around and everyone's brilliant, it amplifies and pushes you forward in terms of business. The key thing, though, is that's not for everyone. So if someone wants an easy, comfortable life and wants to prioritize other things, that's totally fine. And I absolutely respect their right to choose to do that. You just can't do it at OC because the world is literally burning or underwater, sometimes both at the same time. we don't have time to mess around anymore. We need to be doing things. And that's what we invite people into the team to do, to push ahead, to challenge things, to do things differently. The key bits to making that a reality is I have to live it every day. If I don't outwork everyone in the team, how can I ask them to give everything they've got? If I'm not open to criticism and challenge, and I promise, I'm the person that gets mocked the most in our team. Like the most jokes are directed at me. Because as soon as you haven't got a team, you've got a dictatorship. So you get a lot of people who run businesses who think they've got this cordial, jovial environment, but the joke's never on them. So they need to look at themselves and go, really, have we got that culture? If the team didn't joke with me, I would worry I wasn't hearing the honesty. And in a senior role, you can lock yourself away in an office and stop hearing about the reality of the business. You've got to maintain openness to it. That goes to recruitment. We're so fortunate. We're getting, within a couple of days of a job going, we're getting 100 applicants for every role. We've advertised a short-term internship.
I mean, who wouldn't want to work for you guys? It's the right thing to do.
It's not easy though.
Yeah.
It's a challenging place to work, and if you getting feedback constantly, being asked to be a better version of yourself, being asked to go above and beyond, and the performance bar is never the same. So this segues beautifully onto Andrew, our sort of performance psychologist, but we expect more from people every year. So if you've had an amazing year and you go, well, I was brilliant last year, yep, you've just set your bar again. Your bar is now here, it needs to go to here. So in order to give people that level of challenge, you also need to give people a level of support. Now, when we were 8 or 9 people, I could have those one-on-one relationships with everyone. Nearly 30 people now, 11 estates, working with a huge number of different partners. A lot of my role is talking externally about the business. So to give people enough support system inside, we brought in an incredible head of people. Now, it wouldn't be us if we brought in a HR professional. So instead, we brought in one of the country's leading performance psychologists. So PhD in performance psychology. This guy, Dr. Andrew Jewett, is an overachiever in every aspect. So he played in the Scottish Youth Orchestra. He released an album in a band when he was younger. He's played on a national winning sports team. He's won awards for leadership. But the thing that gets him out of bed in the morning is helping people to be better at everything they do. And he does it by unlocking the potential in the person. So he can ask you 3 questions and you will coach yourself for half an hour and leave the room thinking he's a genius. And he'll have asked 3 questions and he will not have directed you in any way. But he's a perfect balance for me as well. So where I'll rev someone up and I'll say, I'm going to go run through that wall. Are you coming? And they're like, yep, let's go. Andrew will say, maybe we don't run through a wall today. How about we do this instead? So I think if you're going to work in a high challenge environment, you need to provide high support as well. And that's borrowed from the best sports team. So in the same way that Sir Dave Brailsford built the Great Britain cycling team that transformed the world, Dave would demand high standards and high performance. He had Dr. Steve Peters there to help with the psychological side of stuff and mental health, and Andrew very much helps with that as well. That psychological side of it, though, is actually really starting to penetrate the environment sector. So our communication engagement lead locally, actually her master's is in environmental psychology. A lady called Abby, who's brilliant, and she does a lot of written work with me. So when I produce stuff, Abby's read and proofed everything I share. And she definitely comes at it through the lens of people's interaction with the environment, which is fascinating.
You said so many things that when you say it, they seem so logical and so reasonable.
Don't you love that when you get a fact?
Exactly, but on the other side, we don't see that happening, right? Being utterly transparent and being ourselves at work, it doesn't happen that often. You know, building high performance teams, surrounding ourselves with people that are better so we strive better, doesn't always happen, right? Having a support for the team to work doesn't always happen. So it's amazing that you take these principles and you actually implement them. Like, I love to feel, you know, the atmosphere in your team and how you guys are just striving for better every single day. And imagine that you have such a strong team. You said that you're working for about 3 years now. Give me an example of one of the most amazing transformations in the landscapes that you have seen. I realize landscapes move slowly and 3 years is not a very long time, but you must have noticed something really incredible happening already.
They do go really slow, but sometimes they take a leap. As a business, we're trying to replicate the leap in natural capital that Tesla made in electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. So prior to the Model S, an electric vehicle, certainly in the UK, was a joke. It was a milk float. It was like, this is not a thing anyone would take seriously. And then all of a sudden, it went from 0 to 100 with a Model S. It became desirable and high performance and things like that. We're trying to make that same leap in the natural capital sector. We're trying to go from the environment sector being the purview of the retiree who plants a tree on a Sunday to the most aspirational industry for the most talented young people to get into. And sometimes you do see those leaps and changes in the environment. So one of our sort of fourth or fifth acquisition was a small hill site in the Yorkshire Dales. Now the Yorkshire Dales is a really iconic landscape. If you go there, it's flat green fields, stone walls, and about one tree. And people think, oh, this is beautiful, it's wonderful. It's not. We don't remember what was beautiful and wonderful. It's just on biscuit tins and storybooks, we've immortalized post-war intensive agriculture. So people are taught that that's what nature looks like. They don't realize what it could be. So we acquire this site. Fascinating acquisition process, been through lots of generations of a family. There'd been a death. No one really had the paperwork. It was really challenging to buy. I should probably shout out to our amazing head of legal, George, who has to do the most challenging thing in actually buying these sites, because it's not like buying an industrial shed or a house. No one gives you a folder full of all the documents. Often you're working with nothingness and story and historic documents and trying to understand the realities of the site.
I have a feeling that after you shouting out to your team and explaining about the culture, you're gonna have like people even more reaching out after they hear you talk.
We're always recruiting. If you're talented, come and talk to us. Hopefully so. So 500 acres of the Yorkshire Dales. When we arrived there, it was glowing neon green because they were just throwing more and more fertilizer at it to trying to force this land to grow grass, and hundreds of sheep everywhere. When you go see this site and the land agent who's selling it's like, you could probably get more sheep on if you wanted. I'm like, no, we're good. So we buy the land, and over a course of the year, the sheep don't, often you have to buy the sheep when you buy a big estate. We didn't with this one, they were tenanted sheep. So we invite the sheep to go elsewhere. We stop putting chemicals on. We did a huge amount of clear up. So there's asbestos to remove from the site. Most farms that you buy are full of rubbish and detritus that's accumulated over the generations. All that's cleared. Buildings are made safe and hoarded up, so because there's a lot of dilapidated buildings on this site. And then we start to really, what can we give the environment? And when we first went there was probably sheep and maybe one bird. You now go back to that site 18 months later, we've planted 60,000 trees in the river corridor to help where there was no seed source. We prefer natural regeneration. If there's existing trees, they'll do the job themselves. They will come back with nature. If there's nothing there, you need to give it a helping hand. 60,000 trees planted, fence lines put up around the site to stop ingress of sheep and deer. And the landscape is just transformed. What was bowling green flat and neon green is now dark greens and browns and changes throughout the seasons. It's scruffy, it's wet, it's absolutely dynamically changed. And the biggest change is you look down as you're walking around and your eyes are blurred. What am I seeing? And the amount of voles and small mammals that are sprinting across the site, nature is just coming back. And the sound, it went from abject silence to a constant hum and buzzing, and it's just completely, your eyes have just widened. Honestly, you've got to come, it's incredible. And then last time we were there, we had 5 owls hunting in daylight because it was like an all-you-can-eat buffet. The amount of nature that was there was just unbelievably incredible.
So owls during the daylight is not typical?
No, usually nocturnal, or towards the end of the day, nocturnal style hunting. So I'd not seen them hunt sort of mid-afternoon before. And even more incredibly, there's really rare red list. So red list is the very rarest, most endangered species of bird there. We have a number of those that have been displayed and we've photographed and are wonderful. We tend not to talk about specific species because it can attract lots of people to a site who want to see birds, and then it ends up being damaging to the environment, which is challenging. But it is an incredibly, incredibly special site. And that's happened in 2 years. So if you give nature a chance, that's why we make sure we pull away the bad first. We wouldn't make quick interventions on other things. So tree planting, for example, in Scotland, that's a 2+ year process to understand the land, to understand the soil, to make sure you're doing the right thing in the right way. But stopping the bad's much easier. If you know something's negatively impacting the environment, you can pause and say, we're not doing that anymore.
You know, when you were talking about this transformation, the feeling that I started to feel, and I think that's what should translate to the general population, is the Brazilian word saudade, because this is what we are missing in our everyday lives. The way that we built society, we became so disconnected from nature. We forgot that we are nature. We forgot that we can only thrive all together. And I'm just imagining all of it that we are missing. I mean, you're explaining how much wildlife you see, owls hunting and rare birds, and all of us, we are missing that. And we don't even realize how much we're missing, and that's such a beautiful story.
We've got an area of temperate rainforest in the southwest, which most people don't know you have rainforests in England.
Yes, please explain, because not everybody knows.
Ancient oak trees, a variety of trees, but principally oak in this woodland, plants growing on plants, so ferns and mosses and lichens. You'll see an old mature oak tree there that's got what's called a string of sausages lichen, so lots of dangly little lichens dropping off it that are only there when the air is completely pure and clean. That landscape, incredibly rare and precious, 130 acres of this. We don't take people there that often because even our footprints are doing damage by being there. So you pick your times to go and when you go. But if we do take someone there, you see them physically change. You see them walk into the environment, their shoulders drop, their breathing slows. The entire environment's different. You walk into different parts of this woodland, the temperature changes and the smell changes, and it really hits you. You start to breathe easier because the air's cleaner. When you come back out of it again, you realise air in a city or a town smells. You don't realise it's a smell because as people, we're only good at noticing differences. We're not good at noticing things that are the same. So when you expose people to those environments, it's magical what it can do to people.
It's amazing. I probably think that they come out of it and they want to do more for nature, right? Because they want to come back to that feeling.
We've seen that. We've seen people more often than not. If we're trying to hire someone who's really special in their career, and we're really fortunate, most of the time people come to us, but a couple of times we've hired amazing people from other sectors. So our director of property is a lady called Fiona. She's amazing. And she was one of the most influential people in built property in Britain. There is no way an environmental company should be able to attract this person, right? No chance. So we took her to Leon to see the rainforest, and I walked around the rainforest with her for a few hours and then said, what about a job? And Fiona now works with us doing property. So sometimes it's really useful to have those things to work with, and really, because it makes people question, I could be doing something more, I could be doing something that was really trying to make a difference. And I think, if anything, and that's why we talk so much about what we do, and we try and share everything we can, we want to give people hope that they can make a difference. Now, I'm not naive enough to think we're going to fix everything. Of course we're not. But if we can make a positive impact and we can inspire 1, 10, 1 million people to do their own positive impact, that's when we deliver systematic change, right?
Talking about that, about hope and systematic change, what's your biggest dream in terms of impact and fixing things?
I don't think I've been asked that before. I guess I hope we make enough of a positive impact that we create an umbrella that lifts up the natural capital economy, a nature-based economy, so that there's 1,000 startups. There's people who are producing tree seedlings and different mechanisms for managing and monitoring the environment, and wildlife experts, and a whole series of industries that arrive to support what we're doing. And then if you fast forward 50 years, I hope what we were doing was so insignificant no one even remembers because we've fixed the problem. That's what I hope, that we're a catalyst for other businesses and other ideas. Along the way, I want some more adventures. Our business is all about environment, impact, and adventure. I want lots of adventures. I'd love to see transformation of landscapes that are in really difficult spots, deserts, droughts, things like that, that we could fix and improve. And I really want to do a large-scale 1 million-acre project in the US. But ultimately, I want what we did to just be the start of a journey where my children and grandchildren and everyone else has solved the problem.
I love it. I love it because we think that it's doing something different. Our whole system is targeted at destruction, and our generation is this targeted pockets doing things.
Yeah.
But I love it looking back and thinking that was just something small. We've actually regenerated things. We helped, and that would be a very beautiful vision.
Because if we're remembered as being, so people right now, including you, have been really kind about the impact we're having and how we're changing things. But if we're still significant in 50 years, we're in a really bad spot, right? Surely what we should be doing should be nothingness. And hopefully we are going to see that. So I wrote a piece recently about comparing the natural capital sector to the evolution of the internet. So businesses and industries follow almost a broad cycle of innovation where academics and then early adopters, and then it drops back a bit, and then mass adopters, and then everyone's using the internet for every different ways. If you apply that similar timeline to the nature-based economy as the internet, we're in the early 90s. We're all using dial-up still, AOL, there's no smartphones, there's no social media, there's nothing. We're so early about the nature-based economy. Maybe I'll be the failed AOL of the natural capital world, but somebody else will be fixing it and doing some amazing things, or maybe we get to be Google, which would be really lovely too.
This made me remember the mission of the ocean cleanup as well. And somebody asked them, what's your dream? And they said, our dream is to clean everything and to be out of business.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so cool. We need different types of businesses that don't just strive for profits, forgetting everything behind and not valuing nature. We need businesses that strive for regeneration and elevating everybody around them, and including nature and other species. We need so much more of this. Rich, another question. What gives you hope for our future? I know you are literally creating hope. And when people come to you and see your projects, they start feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
But with you seeing everything, right? And seeing the world and doing this small piece and hopefully turning into Google of nature restoration, nature-based
I mean, they're doing some good
business.
stuff too.
They are.
The team. The team and the next generation that's coming through. So we do an internship program, paid internship program every year. First year we did it, there was like 3 or 4 of us in the team, so tiny team. We had 100 applicants for this internship, which was like brilliant, great. Fast forward a year, we doubled the size of the team. We were really making waves in a positive way in terms of what's happening. 500 applicants for an intern role. The most amazing campaign calling for people that are different and diverse and wanting to change the world for the better. Even that campaign got nominated for awards for the best sort of marketing out there, which was incredible. Thank you.
High five.
High five. Shout out to Elle who led that. Well done, Elle. And those people that were coming through, breathtakingly talented. So we've got 4 or 5 members of the team now that came through that intern program. One especially stands out. So we do have these 500 people. They meet a couple of members of the team. Then we shortlist them. They meet somebody else. So we like to include as many of the team as possible in recruitment because for a number, it lets the person know what the team's really like. It lets the team know, will this person meet the standards I'm having to perform at, and will they make us better? And it also, no surprise, everyone knows what they're getting and how they work and things like that, and you can get a good spectrum of what's happening. Then we bring the final 10 or 20 people for an assessment day to pick 4 interns throughout the year, 1 for each quarter. And we have this final intern assessment day, and I'd spoke at an event in London the night before, drove back through the night and ended up with a migraine. When I get migraines, I can't see anything, it just goes blurry. So I'm doing a Q&A with a room full of people and I can't see anything. And all of a sudden, someone starts taking the mick out of me from the room, joking at my expense, mocking me, one of the interns. And I'm thinking, we've got to hire this person. And they did it in such a way that was perfectly pitched to be humorous, but not being rude. And anyone with that level of confidence, speed of thought, clarity of delivery, I was like, right, I can't see who this person is, but can we make sure we hire her, please? And then that's Esme, who's our lead ecologist at the moment, who's doing the most incredible job. And then I mentioned Abby earlier, she came through that route as well. We've got estate managers through that route. And the talent of these people. So our directors team will sit and look around and go, we wouldn't get hired now. The new generation, they're more mature, more learned, more research, more prepared, more demanding than any employees ever. And we talked about leadership before. If you are an old school leader that wants to tell people what to do, you're dead. You're a dinosaur. You are done, because the most talented people, they're not coming. They're not coming to be told what to do. They're coming to be challenged and to be encouraged and to be given opportunities. And your job is to keep up with them, not to slow them down or get in the way. And that's the problem. So it's that next generation that gives me hope. And I spoke on a different podcast recently and was asked how everyone else just criticizes the next generation. I'm like, they're not meeting the same people I am then. Maybe they should look at their recruitment processes and try and hire some more exciting people, because every time we meet someone through that, we're just blown away. And that extends through to my children too. So they just see the world. My 5-year-old thinks he's 35 already and is incredibly demanding and very clear about what he wants. And he's like, just do it better, Dad. I just love that ethos and that output. And we're meant to evolve and change and push forward, and we will. And I'm just trying to keep up at the moment, I think.
Rich, speaking about CEOs, I'd love every CEO to be a little bit like you, elevating the team and hiring people and that are better and learning from them and giving them the space to do things. And you're writing a book now. I think it should be on the table of every CEO because I read it.
You're very kind.
But could you please tell more about that book, what it is about?
Yeah. My process for thinking about things, where I really need to draw out what I think about it at a fundamental level and what our position is to write about that. So I'll open my laptop with a question or a title and start writing to explore my thinking, because it means I stay on that topic. And otherwise, I'm an ideas guy. If you give me a topic or a suggestion, my brain will throw 20 ideas at it and run off in different directions. But this allows me to really focus on exploring it and seeing the unintended consequences and the impacts and the crossovers and things. We started doing that over the last 2 years as we started oxygen conservation. And as part of that, I ultimately ended up writing 100 plus articles, which together came to be the book. And what I began to realize is I'd learned so much that my opinions on some of the earlier pieces had changed. So the book is structured in such a way that it's the article as was written at the time, and then me revisiting and reflecting on what was there.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows us to draw out how that opinion's changed and modified over time. Some things haven't, some have a lot. One of the most interesting ones is my thinking around managing deer in the landscape. And we need to be really clear what we mean about that. We mean killing deer or other species to try and restore a balance in nature that we've caused the problem of in terms of people. And so often we're very guilty of disassociative language. We use terminology or titles to really separate ourselves from the reality of what we're doing in the environment. And we don't do that as a company. We call out the truth. But we'd gone from believing that deer management and stalking of deer was this really romanticized thing that everyone, certainly locally in communities, loved and supported. Well, after we'd owned land for a period of time and we had the opportunity to listen and learn from local people, we realized that's not true. It's the purview of people who love deer stalking, but of people in the neighbouring community. They derive no benefit from a small group of people coming from afar to an estate to kill a deer to leave again. Whereas actually what they're suffering from is a landscape without trees and with a lot of damage. And in certain parts of the UK and around the world, massive numbers of deer now are causing an increased number of road traffic accidents and problems because there's just too many of them around, because we're not managing those because we've got rid of every other predator. So the book was my way of sharing our experiences, our learning, and putting what so many people are talking about conceptually, nature restoration, recovery, and growing a natural capital economy, sharing the reality of what that actually looks like, because lots of people have the idea or the concept. We're living it day to day. So at the moment we're looking at that, hopefully will be released summer 2024. We've been talking to some publishers, but I actually quite like the idea of us making it free for everyone just on our website as an ebook. We're so conflicted because you want it to reach people it wouldn't necessarily reach. And I think if we do go with a publisher and agree to let them produce a hard copy, it might reach people it wouldn't otherwise. But equally, I want to democratize this. I want it to be free to everyone to have and to read and just take those learnings away and share it. So I'm kind of split on which we do with it, but it'll come out this summer. And actually we're a good way into number 2 now, and book 2's better. So yeah, book 2, working title, Rewilding Capital or Rewilding Investment. So
I love it.
Yeah, hopefully that will be even better. So I'll put you down for a pre-read of that one when it's done.
We need more books on rewilding and on the nature, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Rich, I feel incredibly hopeful after our conversation and incredibly energized. And I imagine a lot of people on the other side of the cameras, when they're listening, they would love to do something similar. They would love to engage in nature regeneration or have these business models that are actually restorative. What's your message to them?
Do the thing that you're so obsessed about, you'd do it if you weren't being paid. Just be relentless about what you want to do. If that is nature and the environment, if you're a photographer that just is getting out there every minute to take a photograph, do that. We're now in a world with social media and connectivity that you can make whatever your passion is a career. Now, if someone's listening to this and their passion is the environment and is conservation, do it. Do that, but commit to it purposefully. Make it the thing you obsess about. Otherwise, you're going to be average at a load of different things. And if we can help along the way, we produce every article we can. We share all our processes. So if you're going into an interview in the conservation sector right now, how we prep for interviews, how we advertise, how we recruit, all that's available on our website, on my LinkedIn pages. So if that can help people, it's there. Take it and run with it.
How would you make that first step? Where would you find that career in conservation? Are you saying that you have to do what you're good at and just take it from the nature side, like photography or like anything else? But how would, a lot of people are struggling with that first step. And I know for me, there was also a difficulty to figure it out for a while. How do you make that first step? Where do you find it?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I think it depends on the person. I think make an authentic step towards it. So if you're in a business and you really are passionate about nature, not everyone can just say, right, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to go do that. But is there a gap? Is there an opportunity within your role that you could pivot that business to be more aligned with nature? Can you move the business slightly towards it and craft a role from yourself that either grows within that business or gives you an exit point that you can move away from? What is it in your spare time, your hobbies, that allow you to move closer to the thing you're doing? Just be stepping towards something you're passionate about, not away from it. And if you're not stepping closer, you are stepping further away, because we're all getting older and our opportunities as individuals and as life are narrowing. So make that one step and ask for a lot of help as well. So I think LinkedIn's it's how we met. It's an amazing platform for this stuff. So reach out to the people who are where you want to be and excite you, and ask for some help. Now, I've realized just what I've done there. I can't get too many of these every day, right? So I'm still at a point of trying to reply to every email I get personally, and that's really hard. But what I have started to do, if there's someone who's asking for help and there's someone well placed in the team that can give it, so our last lot of interns, they've each spoke to multiple people looking at future internships to give their advice. Because increasingly, as you become more senior in a business, your ability to be good at entering a business and that process, you're further away from it, you're less relevant. So ask for help, but be open to the fact it might not be the person you speak to. They might suggest someone else who will really help. But as I'm about to receive hundreds of emails thanks to your LinkedIn following, I'll be passing help across the network. You just got to follow.
At least they know they will get an answer, right?
Yeah. I just realized what I've done there.
I absolutely love it. Thank you, Rich, for your kindness, for your passion, for your drive, for everything that you and your team are doing for the environment. I'm sure everybody would feel grateful thanks to the work that you are doing. But I also hope that after this podcast interview, a lot of people will start doing similar things, or things that they're passionate about in terms of nature regeneration. And eventually, we will see all of that happening around the world, because we desperately need it. So thank you very much for being an inspiration.
You're very kind. Same back to you. What you're doing to spread the word about environment and sustainability and everything we need to do is spectacular. You've upped it a level in the past few years. So it's an absolute privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.